Even though school is like great, we obviously need it. Some child might be doing better at one thing, other child might be doing better in sports, but all of them are expected to be of the same outcome. I have been thinking that how is it possible, because all of us have different backgrounds, we have different environments, and how are we expected to turn out the same? Pressure was taken off of me. I wasn't forced to sit down and study maths right now. I loved studying English. There was this one part of grammar or vocabulary that used to come in grade 8, but I was doing it in grade 4 because nobody was telling me this thing that okay, you don't have to do this, you have to stick to doing this chapter, this part. There is so much of academic syllabus that even if I want to talk to the students about values, what mindset is, what emotional resilience is, we don't have the time to discuss that. We are just always very focused on completing this syllabus, this curriculum, that curriculum. Even if I want to have a day with the kids and just teach them why integrity is important, why you should be honest, why you should be authentic, there's no time for it left. Knowing what king did what sort of ruling will not help you in that point of life, or knowing a specific maths equation will not help you at that given point. What will help you there is your emotional awareness, is the way you shift your thoughts to get yourself out of that zone and then to later process it.
Welcome to the Sensitive Power podcast, and today I have a very special guest today. This guest is very special because she is one of the youngest coaches that I have ever met so far in my coaching journey. Before I go deep into it, I would love for you to actually listen to her story in her own words. So let's first welcome her. Welcome, Devina.
Thank you so much for having me here, Preetika, and I'm so excited to be here. So, my name is Devina Rao. I started my entire journey at the age of 9. At age 9, I left school and I started homeschooling. And from the age 9 to about 14, I was constantly learning healing modalities such as Reiki, sound healing, alternative healing therapies, and studying about the universe. Then, at the age of 15, I was a certified law of attraction trainer and coach, and that's where my coaching journey started. So, from 15 to now 18, I have been coaching people, I have been training thousands of people. And today, I stand here as an 18-year-old and as an alternative education expert who teaches people how they can bring their child more knowledge other than just school.
Awesome. It's so inspiring to see you do so much in so less time. How did this inspiration come that I want to help people with something as life coaching?
So, when I started my homeschooling journey, I was very fascinated about how everything works. Like, we all know that there is one power behind everything. Like, if you're breathing, there's a power behind it. If Mother Nature is blooming, there's a power behind it. I used to be very curious about learning about how this power works. So it initially started when I wanted to talk to a butterfly that I was chasing, because my father used to guide me on this. He told me that all of us are vibrating on the same energy level. So if you want to, you can actually communicate with the butterfly if you're talking in the same language. So those little sciences and all of that stuff used to help me a lot. And as I grew up, that talking went from talking to a butterfly to talking to my own inner self. And that's when I realized that one single power, talking to your inner self, is something that every person needs in their life. Because at times we are at situations where we feel like we don't really have someone to talk to, or we need some sort of guidance, we are not sure who to ask it for. So that is a superpower everybody needs, and that's what's inspired me to coach and to train people.
The students that come to you, what is their biggest issue that you are solving?
For about 3 years, I was working with energy manifestation. And my take on manifestation used to be about emotions. Like, a lot of people who want to learn about manifestation, but they feel like they can't just think positive all of the time. I've had so many people come up to me and say that manifestation says that you have to think positive. But if I'm going through a low in life, how do I convince myself? My brain just tells me to like cut it out. So that is something people struggled with. Like, you can't just think out of nowhere. That's where I introduced emotions to manifestation and I helped those people change their perspective, that instead of just thinking, you're analyzing your emotions, you're accepting what you're feeling at first, and then you're changing it to an empowered state of emotions. Like if someone wants to get to a goal, but they're feeling very doubtful of it, so no matter how much they say that I am succeeding, but if they have that doubt, then they aren't able to connect within themselves. So we first make them accept that, okay, this is a feeling that you're feeling, which is called doubt. If you want to have manifestation work for you, you're going to have to change the doubt to faith. So using emotions to create manifestation results, because if you're aligning your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, you're aligning all of it together, that's when you manifest. So this is what I was working with on energy manifestation.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. So basically, let's say you have a negative emotion, it means you are having a lower vibration with respect to the manifestation. And then what you do is you convert it into a good emotion, into a higher vibration. And that will help you manifest that particular goal faster. Is this right?
Absolutely, because if you're telling your mind that I should start thinking nice stuff, but internally you're still you're stuck in that place of doubt. Until and unless you change it to a higher vibration, because what you want is something that you might not have right now. So it's like at a higher vibration. So in order to get there, you have to raise your own vibration. So once you're changing that emotion, you're coming up on the same level, so you can meet at right at that manifestation level. So right, you're correct. You got it right.
But most people struggle with it, right? Like, if, let's say, if they are angry or they are frustrated because of something, how do you convert that into a positive emotion?
What some people miss is they don't accept the emotion they are at right now. Like they won't be willing to accept that they're angry or they won't be willing to accept that they're doubtful. So that's where it comes in. Like some people just know that they're feeling something, but they don't know what to call it or what do you name it. Once you're identifying what it is, then you're able to clear it out better. So identification is one thing that most people miss, and then they wonder what is happening to us. The reason why this happens is, let's say when we are children. Now that I've been working more with children and how they can have more alternative education experiences, when we are kids, we're usually just focused on getting high marks, doing this, doing that, topping everything. If a child is crying, what we say, we just ask that child to stop crying, or we just tell that, okay, you shouldn't feel like this, always stay positive. So if you're trying to force positivity without identifying what you're feeling like, let's say I was talking about doubt, let's say if I am at that place of doubt, until and unless I identify that, once I've identified it, then I will go back and track that why do I feel this. It might have been because of a past experience. So most of us aren't ready to face that part. Like you said, that lack of emotional intelligence is because we weren't really empowered to focus on it. Like it's only until a couple of years now that it has been more of a growing topic, as nobody used to talk about this earlier.
This makes me notice one more aspect of the time when I was a kid, where if I would express my emotions also, as you rightly said, I would be said ki just shut up or chup karo, stop crying. And even if I'm looking at my friends now, some of them who are even coaches, I have seen this happening that if somebody is trying to process this some emotion, I have seen another coach coming and telling, okay, so this has happened, right? Okay, let it go. Why are you holding on to it? But this person was sitting, taking some time, trying to process this emotion and going to a place where he wants to feel better about it. But even though this person was driving towards it, there were other people, the friends around us, who were telling, ki, why are you dwelling on it? Just let it be, it's you shouldn't spend too much time on something like this. So looks like this is everywhere, and we have always been taught to just to let it go. But while we are saying let it go, the let it go is not happening. It is just getting pushed inside, and one day it comes out as a volcano, like maybe an anger, an anger episode. You act out, or even if you can't do that, then you might end up being with the health issues also. So this is what I have also seen in my students as well. You're rightly pointing it out, and there is one more aspect of it, which is like if you are acting out, you're telling that you have these emotions or you're expressing your emotions, you are being called out as too sensitive. And that's the reason why the name of my podcast is The Sensitive Power. So, this was the main reason where I wanted to tell everybody that being sensitive is good and insensitive is bad. In that sense, you are doing an amazing job where you are actually helping people be more emotionally intelligent and then convert that into a good one. Can you give my audience a little bit of an understanding where they can start with doing this, where take a negative emotion, identifying, anyway, we talked about how to identify, but once we identify that this is a bad emotion, how to convert that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Whatever you said until now, it was just like right on the spot when you're talking about how that person wanted to like dwell onto it first and process it first and then let it go. Because I'm pretty sure it happens in adulthood, but even like me in my teenager phase, and even when I see my friends all around, we don't allow ourselves the time to process stuff. The same thing, whenever it comes to processing stuff, we would be like, we are either told or we have this belief inside of us that if I dwell onto this too much, it's gonna like, it's just wasting my energy, which is true. If you're dwelling on something too much without any intention of growing out of it, then that's not helpful for you. But not processing anything and just leaving it for later, that okay, I don't have the time to do this right now, that's when that thing sort of like turns into a belief into you. So if someone has to work on this, what, let's say I'll take an example. I was using this example of doubt and to faith because I recently was talking to someone about this. Let's say I want to start a new business venture, and before starting, I am a little skeptical that I'm not sure how is this going to work out, whatever is going to happen. And even after putting in all of my efforts, I'm putting in my thoughts that I might be doing affirmations that, okay, this is how I want it to turn out. I'm getting these many customers, I'm getting this much of value and everything. I could be doing all that, but still not get any result because I'm not connected to it with feelings. I'm not connecting my emotions to it. Because somewhere internally, I might still have that doubt. Now that I have figured out that, okay, the feeling inside of me is doubt, I would go back in time. Like, we can just like recall what was a moment in life, especially in this area. Did I do some business venture earlier where I might not have gotten results, or where people must have said something to me? Is that where this doubt is sprouting in from? Maybe I could have done a business venture earlier that didn't work out. So now I doubt myself that, okay, no matter what you do, it's just not going to work out. It could be anything. And if I would have processed it back then this wouldn't have happened. And processing isn't just dwelling that, okay, my business failed, this didn't happen. It is taking out the learnings from that experience. So if someone who has had a business venture that didn't work out, for them, processing would be analyzing everything that led up to that situation and then taking out the learnings from it. Maybe you could have done some sort of different marketing, maybe you could have targeted different customers, maybe you could have improved your product, anything like that. So you're taking out learnings out of it, and then whatever remaining emotion that you still have, by this point you will like, your brain will be automatically convinced that, okay, if I would have strengthened these areas, then the result would have been better. So automatically you're knowing that it isn't just the doubt that's holding you back, it's how you weren't taking learnings from it and you were just focused on the negative emotion. Because every failure only comes from when we try something. If you wouldn't have tried, then nothing would have happened. But if you've tried it out and if something doesn't work out, you have so many learnings to take from it. So similarly, and this works for every emotion. It works for anger. It works for, there are people who have short tempers. So it eventually happens when you just keep on building stuff up, you don't process it, you don't take the learnings out of it. So, like you said, the fear of failure, that like it comes from a place of fear of judgment, that what will people say? Maybe my family would start doubting me that, okay, you can't do anything. Stuff like that happens. So, even here, let's say we are analyzing where is that fear of judgment coming from. You have so many variables that, okay, it's coming from friends, it's coming from family, it's coming from society. Now, the thing is, you can't change other people. That's a fact. even if you're trying to change other people, they won't change. You'll just end up being more frustrated. What you do in that situation is you build a stronger sense of shield. Okay, some people are there for constructive criticism, but for those who aren't there, if you're letting them weigh you down, then neither is it benefiting you, nor is it gonna help you prove to those people that you can still like get to wherever you want to get. So this is one thing, that along with processing your emotions, you have to protect yourself from other variables as well. Like self doubt is something that comes within me, so I can eliminate it. But for the other stuff, I will have to make myself stronger. Whatever they say about emotional resilience, this is where it comes in. That okay, people will say stuff. Some people say it for your betterment. Some people say it because they care for you and they want to you to do better. Some people would just say for the fun of it. But that's where you have to build that thick skin around you. That itself will save you from so many negative beliefs. It will save you from so many negative emotions, because this is something that we get from our environment and we have to protect ourselves from it. And specifically, I am very inspired to use this for children as well. Because if you're taught this at your foundation level itself, there is this one tagline that I recently used in a post and it had a great response. It was, let's raise children who don't have to heal from their childhood later. All of this stuff eventually starts at childhood itself. So, the event that I'm about to do right now, I'm catering from age 7 to 14. So, the first 7 years of a child's life, that's when you're shaping that child, right? So from when the child is born up till then, they're like absorbing everything around in their environment, whatever people there are, and they're building in all of those beliefs and everything. But to understand all of these keywords and terms, like when I started when I was 9, I was learning about consciousness and subconscious. At that time, I couldn't even spell it right, but I was like learning it as simplified as possible. So the earlier you learn, the better it will be concrete. And up until 14, I've done it because after that, we just get really busy into exams and academic pressure. So I feel like this is the perfect age for some a child to make that foundation so they can use it as fast as possible. Even when they're up to the exam phase, they can apply it right then and there.
Was it always like this in the beginning of your coaching journey, or have you helped any other ages of people as well?
So my father is also into business coaching, right? And sometimes they would come in there with their families, because even if someone, everything is all interconnected. So sometimes something, if they are having some sort of issue, they would bring in their family for it. So I used to coach their kids. I used to coach their, like, the women in the family, because we like really need to process all of our emotions as well. We're always just helping everyone around us, and even though we are more sensitive and more expressive in emotions, we still do end up like bottling it up just so we can take care of everyone else better. So that's where I initially started. I used to work with a few women. I was coaching them. And after that, when I started my energy manifestation coaching, when I was helping people balance their energy and emotions, that's when people started talking to me about their kids as well, because like they were inspired up with my homeschooling journey as well. So I did do a few coachings with children. What I learned was everything that I learned, it was still like in very heavy words and heavy terms. It took me a while to learn all of it. So my mission was to simplify everything as much as possible. So it doesn't feel like you're learning a very heavy subject. It feels like you're learning it just as you're like reading a book or watching a cartoon.
Wow. So far, how many students have you helped with their life?
When I'm training, the first ever stage where I spoke, there were about 5,000 people there. That was when, at the age of 9. And in my coaching journey, I've coached about 30 to 40 people one on one. That's what I've been doing. But more than that, I've done stage talks. So the first one was at 5,000 people. Then I did one, it was 700, 800 people, stuff like that. Yeah.
Among your one-to-one students, what is the highest age of your student?
I'm not sure about their age, but there is this one person who's almost the same age as my dad, maybe 1 or 2 years younger, but I would say they're in their 50s.
Wow. That looks like an amazing feat to be able to help a person who is in their 50s while being 18 or even 17, right? We kind of have an understanding of your emotional intelligence, which is way more than even so many of the people who are in their 50s. While you are doing so much in your life, already taking care of the financial aspect of your life at this age, and much earlier also you started. So one thing that I can't help but notice in this is that you have been homeschooled from the age of 9, right?
Right.
So let's start with what homeschooling is and then let's take it forward. Yeah, tell me, what is homeschooling and how were you homeschooled, and is there a proper structure to it like our education?
So, homeschooling is basically the concept where your child is not going to a traditional schooling system and you're teaching them their academics. And if they're pursuing any other hobby or anything like that, all of their learning is done in their home environment. So mostly when I started, once again, people did not know what homeschooling is. The only people who did know about it, either they were kids from a family that used to travel a lot. So for the convenience of traveling, they had to leave school. Or kids who wanted to pursue some other hobby. Let's say someone wants to be a musician or like something in the arts direction. And if they weren't able to get any time out of school for their hobbies, if they wanted to pursue it as a career, so that's when people would do homeschooling. When I started, it was a very alienated concept. Nobody knew about it. And because all of us, like, we are always taught that education is like really important. You need to get good grades, good job, good salary, everything like that. So people did like oppose of it, that if you're, because people think if you're taking a child out of school, their learning has come to an end because school is the only place where you can learn. That's what some people like. They have this conception about homeschooling.
They would start judging also, right?
Yeah, there were so many different types of judgments. So even kids around me, let's say when I left school and in my neighborhood, there was one child who thought I failed in school, that's why I left. Some people would go to the extent of saying that, okay, maybe you couldn't afford going to school. Maybe you were kicked out of school. Maybe you weren't doing well. You didn't have a single subject where you were acing, so that's why. Because it's a very unusual thing. The only time you see someone leaving school is either because they failed or they were suspended or something like that. So leaving school on a positive note was such like a big deal for everyone. Like they weren't able to understand it then.
Okay. So coming to homeschooling, there would be some kind of an event which would have triggered this decision to go into homeschooling, right?
Right. That did happen. So I left school when once I completed fourth grade, right? And when I was in fourth grade, there was a parent teacher meeting. Usually my mom would go for the parent teachers meeting, but this one specific time my dad came along with me. And just like that, we were there and we were sitting at the back of the classroom. All of the other parents were there with the kids. And my father was just observing everything that was happening in that classroom. There was one teacher, there were like 43 students in one class, and just had an overall look of the environment. Even though the school that I went to, it was like a great school, it was like one of the top schools in my city. Still, then he just had a look at everything that was going on, and he just had this realization that there must be a better way of educating my child than this. So that incident happened. After that, he started looking out for different ways he could educate me. Because even though school is like great, we obviously need it, and I am very grateful. I went there till fourth grade. It's just that there all of the kids are treated the same. Some child might be doing better at one thing, other child might be doing better in sports, other would be better in music or anything like that, but all of them are expected to be of the same outcome. Now that I've grown up and I've had my own perception of homeschooling, I have been thinking that, okay, if we're all expected to be of the same outcome, how is it possible? Because all of us have different backgrounds, we have different environments, all of us have different thoughts and beliefs and exposure. And how are we expected to turn out the same? So that is what my perspective on schooling has been. Even though we do need it, but there can be much better ways. You can learn, you can have more knowledge. And we're talking about knowledge here, not just information, because some stuff that we learn, it just stays at the back of our mind as information, but not as practical knowledge that we can use ahead in life.
Yeah, very, very true. Fourth standard was the last time you attended, and then you did not go to fifth standard. So,
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about the transition that happened? Like this year, I'm not going after the summer holidays, for example. How was your approach to it, and what were you feeling about it?
So when we decided that I'm about to start homeschooling, it was February 2016, and I had a day of school. So just to give a little background here, my family and my dad, they're like people here are spiritual. Like so, I had that sort of access there. Just like I shared that butterfly story, this one day we had a day off school, and there was a park in front of my house. So I was there with my father. I was playing. I was chasing a butterfly. And that's when my father told me that, okay, you don't have to chase a butterfly, you can actually talk to it, and then it will come to you by itself. So I was like, you're just joking around with me. This is not true. And then I don't know what at that time, I genuinely thought this was some sort of a magic trick because my dad closed his eyes and I don't know how did he communicate with that butterfly. Later on, I realized it was called telepathy, but at that time, I was like, okay, this is just some sort of random magic trick he's doing. And that butterfly landed right on his shoulder. It just flew over my head that how did this happen? Is this like what sort of magic is this? I'm not sure what this is like. So for me, it was like a Disney princess moment. I'm like, how does this happen? Then I got very curious. I was like, I want to talk to butterflies too. I want to talk to animals too. How did you do that? And then I'm like, okay, you're just joking around. This was just a butterfly. Let's do it with a cat. So there was a cat crossing by, and I was like, this butterfly is just a small thing. Let's try it with the cat. Would you be able to talk to that? So he's like, yeah, you can. And you wouldn't believe this, but that cat was crossing the park and it was going in its own direction. And we were standing about here. That cat actually moved its face right there and it was looking at us. And that for me was like a whole Disney princess moment that what is this? How can we talk to animals and everything? And then I'm like, I want to learn this. So my dad did give me a brief that, okay, that cat and that butterfly, they are also alive. They have a power within them. You're also alive. You have a power within yourself. So if you are on the same level of power, then you can communicate. So I was able to understand a little bit. So I was like, I want to learn more about this. And it's just like a lot of events like falling together. So that PTM thing happened, and then this butterfly thing happened. And I was like, okay, so even if I leave school, I have so much to learn about. So at that point, my dad was like already researching about how I can be homeschooled. We checked out IB open schooling, we checked out NIOS open schooling, like the Indian version of it and everything. And finally, I started my homeschooling journey in March 2016.
Okay. So, how does it feel to do homeschooling in the sense that so many people are still very much clueless about what homeschooling is? Like, you started your homeschooling means, did your mother, for example, did she really take out all the syllabus and start teaching you at home? Like, what was the scenario like at home that you had to go through?
When I started this journey, I was obviously going to be studying academics. So we already had selected a board. It's called National Institute of Open Schooling. So just like you have CBSE, NCERT, or like state board and stuff like that. So it's also a government board. That's where I was planning to study from. So I could give my 10th boards and my 12th boards. But for the rest of the grades, like from 5th to ninth, I used to get the same books that my friends used to be reading. So mostly all of the schools have NCERT CBSE syllabus. My mother would take me to the shop and I would get all of the subject books like math, science, social sciences and all of that. And I would study them by myself. Because here now I was not in a race to get the best marks to get everything. As long as I can understand the concept, I'm all sorted. So even there I was just doing self learning because once that pressure is taken away from you, that performance pressure, then you are more at ease learning. So it didn't seem much tough to me. I used to, for my entire homeschooling journey, I've studied by myself. So like my mom wasn't teaching me, my dad wasn't teaching me. For academics part, I did it all by myself. Other than that, this is what I used to do for about 2 to 3 hours of the day. Then, on the other hand, I was learning alternative healing therapies and learning more about the subconscious mind and everything. So, in order to understand how to talk to an animal, I had to understand what my energy is, what my conscious mind, what my subconscious mind is, what telepathy is, how can I vibrate on the same level of energy as that butterfly. Now, even there used to be some sort of like challenges because those people were a little skeptical in enrolling me in the classes because they weren't sure would I understand, would I not understand, because I was the youngest. Like they never expected a 9-year old to join their classes. But I did that. I got some books. My dad used to get me a lot of books. So I had that school sort of environment in my home as well. Let's say in my school, from the library, I used to read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So just as I left school, my father got me those books that okay, you can read these when you want to take a break, like for fun. That is some stuff. So we were making that environment at home for me.
Okay. So, what was the difference that you felt from going to school every day and homeschooling?
So the first 1 month of homeschooling, I'll be very honest, it was like a summer vacation for me. And one thing that used to happen is when I was in school, I used to get sick quite often. Like, I don't know, it must have been my immunity or something like that. But about in like 2 weeks or so, I would get like a fever or anything. Maybe it was because of the school stress that you're waking, even if your child is in deep sleep and you have to wake her up at, I don't know, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., then you're not getting the time to recover. You're going to school, you're coming back home at 3 p.m., then you're studying again, doing your homework, then you go out to play and do homework again, tuitions and all. So for the first 1 month, I slept a lot. But that was it helped me recover in a way. I used to be very skinny and like underweight and everything. But the first 1 month when I used now I realized that it was me recovering back and it was me like building up all of that immunity, all of that strength again that was really in stress at that time. And along with that, I just started the all of these classes. So these classes used to start at 8 a.m. in the morning and end up by 5 or 6 p.m. So on the weekends, I used to go to Delhi with my parents and I was learning Reiki healing, I was learning sound healing and all of these. So I used to go there, then I would come back, read at my own pace all of the course books so I can understand better, and I would do my academics side by side.
So when I was 9 years old, my mom had to literally make me sit and do the homework. And this is something that I've seen in most of the students. But for you, looks like you were doing your academics on your own, even at that age. So how did that happen? Because this is very unusual where I'm coming from.
See, the thing is, when you're leaving school, when I got to know that okay, my parents are taking a transfer certificate, I'm coming out of school. I was so excited not to go to school. Just like every other kid, I was like, okay, no more homework, no more classes. I was a kid who didn't really like math. So I was like, okay, no more math classes, nothing like that. I came home, I used to watch TV. I was just on full vacation mode for about 1 or 2 weeks. Now, usually, when you're taking a vacation in school, you know you have to get back to school in about 2 weeks or so. At one point, it's just once you've done everything in extremes, like sleeping how much I want, watching TV how much I want, playing outside for 4 or 5 hours with my friends, at one point you're like, okay, now I think I should study. And now, just like I said, that pressure was taken off of me. So let's say I wasn't forced to sit down and study maths right now. I could take up, let's say I loved studying English. So there was this one book called High School English Grammar. And even though it was my brother's book, it wasn't in my syllabus because it was high school. I used to love doing the exercises in that book. So technically, even that is studying. I'm studying English. I was learning. So I don't know, there was this one part of grammar or vocabulary that used to come in grade 8, but I was doing it in grade 4 because nobody was telling me this thing that, okay, you don't have to do this. You have to stick to doing this chapter, this part. So it's basically I had the freedom to explore and to do what subject I wanted to. If I felt like I would study one subject for 2 hours just because the chapter was a fun story, something like that. So you're having that freedom to choose what you want to do. So even in my academics, I had the option to choose. Someday I would only study English. Someday I would study more of, I would do 1 hour of this subject, 1 hour of that. It's just that when the pressure is taken off, you open up to choosing what you want to study.
Is there like a deadline that by March you need to complete this, in this whole year you need to complete these books? Was there a deadline like that?
Yeah, so we just wanted to make sure that I am on the same level of academics as of my other friends or like kids around me. I started fifth grade with homeschooling. I was aiming to like be on the same pace as other kids. Someday I might just study for 1, 2 hours, but then on the other day I would. There weren't any harsh deadlines that I have to complete this chapter by this or that, but just to like stay on the same level, that once my friends are going in sixth grade, I will also be moving up to sixth grade books. So that is a sort of thing I always had. I think I back then in that grade we had 5 subjects. So I would get those subject textbooks, I would get the notebooks, and whatever question answers there were in the books, I used to write it down. So this is one thing I clearly remember. My parents always told me to write at least 4 pages a day, because just in case, because of homeschooling, if I would have like been too much like, like very chill, and I might have lost my writing practice. So this was a given thing. I would always like, I would get all of my notebooks, I would decorate them like I would in school, I would write down question answers and everything. And this one habit I clearly recall, I had this one diary, and to improve my vocabulary and English, and there was a column in the newspaper called The Speaking Tree.
Yeah.
So my father used to tell me, you have to read The Speaking Tree every day and write it down in your notebook. So at that time, it didn't make much sense to me. I was like, if I'm reading it, why do I have to write it? But it was for the writing practice, because even though I wasn't giving unit tests and everything in homeschooling, I still have to give exams at some point. So just so I don't lose that in writing practice, I used to do that all the time.
So your mother used to evaluate all these 4 pages that you write every day. Was it like that?
Yeah, yeah. And even if someday my mom is busy, I would like check it on her phone from those answer solution websites. That okay, did I write the right answer? Then I would check, yes, oh, this is okay. So I could also self-evaluate the work that I am doing.
Let's go through a few resistances that are coming to my mind right now, which people would be having when they are listening to this. So, the first thing that I can think of is if this would happen and if the kid is always at home, then the kid is going to become very lazy. What if the kid would not do any of these things? So, what is your answer to that?
I believe discipline is like a very necessary thing in homeschooling. So, one thing I'll mention right about, I think after the first week of homeschooling, we legit took out the TV from my house. Else, I would have been watching, I don't know, some sort of cartoons, Mickey Mouse, Doraemon, and stuff like that. I used to watch it for a while, and then somehow the TV like got some sort of, it got broken, and then we just never got it fixed. But for me, the discipline part was also coming in from the other courses that I was doing. So, this is one thing that is very important. If you are considering to homeschool your child, make sure that you're either giving them the exposure to choose what they want to pursue. It just perfectly aligned that I had this interest in learning about energy sciences. So, I shifted my focus there. I was learning there. So, if someone who's watching, if you want to homeschool your child, either see what the child has interest in. Maybe your son is great at football, or maybe your child is really great at arts and crafts, or just wants to create something. So look at what interests do they have, because homeschooling comes with a lot of time. Like you're having all the day to yourselves, and like you said, if you're having too much time, then you're going to be lazy. So you have to make that discipline. So everybody used to have holidays on Saturday, Sundays. I used to have full studying days on Saturday, Sundays. So if we had to go to Delhi for like reach there at 8 a.m., I would wake up at 6, we would get ready, just eat an apple on the way, and then study all day there and then come back. So I was getting that part from there. And even then, I used to make a timetable schedule that, okay, this is the time that I'm waking up, this is time for me to study English for this and that. Even if I didn't want to label subjects, I would say this is study session 1, study session 2, and 3. That is very necessary, because if you don't build a disciplined routine in homeschooling, and especially in today's world, because everything is just so fast paced, you won't know where the time has gone. So that is something very, very crucial.
What would you suggest for kids that are stubborn? They are always wanting to play, and now though there are kids who are so addicted to screens already. So if a kid like that who is not able to keep up with the academics as harsh as it is right now, the parents are thinking about homeschooling, but the kid is already addicted to screens, addicted to a phone or a tablet that they have been given. And now the parents are thinking about homeschooling for the kid. So, what advice would you like to give to them?
I would say, like, if I were in the parents' shoes, what I would do is I would ask the child what their favorite subjects are. Because even if someone doesn't like school, but they're still going there, so they must have one subject that, okay, I prefer this one more than this. I would probably just ask them that what subjects do you like? Like, I did not like maths at all, but I was doing English. So you just have to like work on, I guess, a reward based system. Initially you give them the freedom to choose that, okay, you can study your favorite subject first, that's fine. But if they're starting to study that subject, then they'll get the hang of it. Then you can ask them, okay, now it's time to work on this. But if you're like waking up and telling them the first thing in the morning to like work on the subject that they don't like, it's not that we're pleasing the kid too much, it's just that we're giving them the freedom to choose that, okay, you like this subject, you do this first. You want to do arts and crafts first, you do this first. Sometimes I still do this now. Let's say if I have to take a coaching session or if I have to do a webinar, I prefer doing something creative in the morning, because doing that creative stuff, it like helps me get into my zone and I will be able to answer stuff better. I will be able to work better. But as for screens, honestly, if we had a TV in my home, I might just have been there as well, but we had no option. So instead of like the TV was out, then I used to play more outside, which was great. It was like great for my fitness and health. Like we used to like run around the park and play around. But yeah, it's more of allowing the freedom to choose and then working out a disciplined routine around that.
So far, what I am learning is that the aversion that we have had as a kid to learning, right? It came only because of the pressure to complete everything in a structured period of time. But otherwise, if we observe a very small kid, a toddler is always ready to learn so many things. Always curious, always learning. In school, what's happening is the curiosity is being killed, and then you are told to learn everything like a robot, and that's not helping the kid in any way, because the kid learns much better when they are curious. Like even now, I am 37 years old and I am learning psychology now. What I was understanding about how I was learning is that when I was doing my engineering, I was not at all curious. It was like, I have an exam, I need to finish my learning, so I will still sit and I would break my head as to understand stuff so that I can basically vomit it onto the exam paper. But here I'm learning because I am learning. And also, I do not have the pressure of making money, that I have to finish this. What if I fail? I don't have that kind of a pressure like I had in engineering. So I'm learning psychology so that I can help more people. I'm learning with a lot of curiosity, thinking that, okay, if there is this student coming to me with this particular problem, how am I going to solve that? And in that way, I am learning the whole syllabus, and that is such a beautiful way to learn. So, are you saying that this is how you were learning entirely for your schooling?
Yeah, so like you shared, let's say you're learning psychology. So now you have a purpose why you're learning psychology. It's to help people. Now, when we're in school, most of the time it is just for marks. That, okay, I need to get good marks in this. And when you're cramming everything in your head just to put it in for the marks, you aren't even learning the concepts well. You will learn it only for the exam and not for actual life use. So here the objective had changed. I did not have the pressure to learn for marks that, okay, I need to get plus in my exam or anything. The objective here was that the concept is clear with me. if I am aware of it. Just like you shared, if when there is a toddler in front of you and you'll just keep a pencil, the toddler will automatically grab it by itself and then they would start to write something. But if you're just trying to like push a pencil in their hand and that make them write, so they'll start to resist it. But out of curiosity, you just nailed it so right. Your driving force sort of changes. So when I was learning, I was doing that high school English grammar book. I was learning that because I genuinely wanted to like read and write that like that. I was reading these story books called Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Now, even though they weren't like very knowledgeable, it was just for fun. But reading that made me realize, okay, I really like the English that is written in it. The way they are communicating, the way they're expressing, even I want to learn like that. So, out of curiosity, I started learning from that English grammar book. So, you just like nailed it so right. And that's how I worked all of my homeschooling journey. Like, out of curiosity, I started doing it, and not because of this constant pressure. Because then your objective changes. Then, if you're reading a chapter, you will only read whatever that is coming in the exam. You will know that these chapters are coming and you will only study that. But when you're reading out of curiosity, you would read the book from start to end.
This also reminds me, there was a time when my daughter used to take a pencil or a pen and she used to write everywhere. Basically, scribbling. She used to hold like this and scribble. Okay. So there was a lot of scribbling happening in the whole house. She was still writing some letters, and then there was a lot of scribbling that was still happening. And this was something, of course, she was doing on her own. But now, all her classmates, they are able to write cursive very well, and now when she is kind of noticing that and comparing herself to others that she is not able to write cursive very well, her interest in writing has also come down. So I think comparison also becomes a big problem, where we think that we are not good enough just because someone else is doing a little better than us. So I think that is a place where you were at an advantage with homeschooling. Is this right?
It is. I think there is a saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And even though it applies to all of us adults, it does start from school itself. Now, like you said, she's great at maths. I am pretty sure she might be doing maths better than her classmates as well. But because of we are supposed to be at a set standard and we are just pleasing the system there. But you're right. So I was clearly at an advantage in this level. Like when, let's say, I used to not like math, and I used to see there was this one incident in my maths class where so the teacher's favorite student of maths, he was sick for about I don't know 5 to 10 days, and when he came back to school, he had done all of his classwork and homework in those 10 days. So the teacher was like very happy. She was almost about to cry that, okay, even after being sick, this child did all of his homework. Now the thing is, we were very happy for that child, but now that child had set up a standard for the teacher. And then she was expecting from all of us kids that, okay, even you should be doing it like that. So that is where comparison early started. That, okay, if we want ma'am to talk to us sweetly as well, we also have to do our maths class. And like you said, you sort of start to lose interest that, okay, if I won't do it, then they won't like it. So why should I? Like it should be that teacher should be constantly talking to everyone nicely. Why is she only talking to the good? These sort of thoughts did crop up in my minds and in my friends' minds that okay, this is happening. But when I left school, even though I totally had the option that okay, I don't have to study maths anymore, but I did for the sake of it. And then I also started exploring more ways I can learn maths fun. Like then I used to sometimes work on my father's laptop. There was this website called Khan Academy. So they used to teach maths, but it was a very fun way. So I used to learn maths there. That okay. And because it was so fun, I started from learning, they started from I think grade 2 maths and it went up till grade 9 or 10th. Because it was a fun way, I started from grade 2 as well. That okay, these concepts I did learn in school, but I want to learn them in a fun way again. So that changed a lot. It is the same subject, but the way of teaching as well. So I found a fun way. Then I was getting more interested in it. They had activities. They had a quiz that if you get a right answer, there will be confetti all over the screen. So it was fun, and I was getting more attracted to learning that. So what you're talking about, it is very accurate that you get the freedom to choose it to pursue it yourself.
Yeah. How was your first exam experience like?
My first exam experience was actually in grade 10, like the first when I was there in an exam hall. Before that, in every class, like once it was about to complete, when I know all of my peers are having their exams, I would take up previous exam papers and I would solve them. Like, let's say if grade 5 is about to end and they're having their final exams, I would take that and I would complete it. Let's say for a subject like maths, that website that I used to learn on, they had their own unit tests. I used to complete that. And they had their own like 40, 50 questions assessments. I used to did that and they would, and I was like, okay, this subject is done. For the others, which didn't have this test system, I used to get the previous paper exams and solve it them by myself. My first exam experience in 10th. Now that's like a whole another tangent because then my syllabus shifted. So, like I shared with you, I was studying through National Institute of Open Schooling. I enrolled in grade 10. Before that, I was just taking the books from NCRT and I was reading them. So they had a different syllabus and their syllabus was easier than NCRT, honestly. So during that, like even though in grade 10 kids go for tuitions and everything, I had the option to choose whatever subject I want to. So there, like I had to choose one or two languages, and then there were these subject sections, and I could pick whatever I wanted. So there, let's say in science, I was really leaning towards home science because the content that they had in home science was so interesting. It had a module for budgeting, it had a module for crafts, it had a module for household, it had a module for business as well. So that home science was like very interesting. So in grade 10th, I got all of my favorite subjects. I got English, Hindi, home science, psychology, and data entry. So this was like computer science. I got all these five subjects, and because it was of my interest, it was like easy to read. For here, though, I couldn't get all of the physical books. So at this point, I had, by chance, I went to the World Book Fair and I got 2 to 3 books. I got for English and for Hindi and for home science. The rest of the books, I couldn't get them. So I used to download ebooks. Now, for NIUS, for every subject of every grade, you can get ebooks to download. So I took my mom's tablet and I used to study on that. Like I got all the ebooks there. Now, once again, they were my favorite subjects. Like home science was super, super interesting. So I used to read it like a manual, like a study book. But now that was the very first time I did not know how do exams work. But I had my elder cousins, I used to ask them that, okay, I'm preparing for my exams. What should I do? So she told me to check the previous year exam papers and you should do that and like write them down. Now, I wasn't very sure. I used to ask that, okay, if there's a 5 mark question, how long am I supposed to write? If there's a 6 mark question, how long am I supposed to write? So for that, I had to take guidance from everyone. That's how it was going.
Because you had never experienced that for so long, how did it feel to go to a center and sit with everybody and not talk to anybody and just sit at one place and get your questions and then answer them and give? How was that experience like?
I'll be very honest, I was quite nervous because in that exam hall, I wouldn't know anyone because it's not like I had any classmates I would know. I was nervous. I was honestly like a little tense that, okay, I just hope I remember everything. I just hope I'm, because some of the subjects for which I didn't have the books, like for Hindi, I had book one, but book two I didn't have. So on ebooks, I used to study. I was like, I'm not sure if I remember everything because even Hindi was a slightly weak subject for me. I was more leaning towards psychology and English. Those were my top subjects. So I was just like always thinking that, okay, if I will be able to write all of this. I knew now I realized that, okay, this is what the writing practice was for. So when I asked my elder sister, like my cousin, to show me what her answers looked like, so she showed me a 6 mark question and she's like, okay, you have to write at least half of the page, just fill it up and write it. I was like, okay, I will be able to do this. I'll add words from vocabulary. That much I had learned from that high school book back when I started. So once I got into the hall and then I just like read the book, I was just thinking that will I be able to write that fast? But I was able to cover it. So recalling all of the answers and everything. It's not like I knew anyone. I could discuss that, okay, what chapter did you study, what chapter you didn't. So the system for NIS was very self reliant. I had all of the books, and I also, in fact, in grade 12, it was a whole lot easier because they keep updating their stuff. So I'll tell you about grade 12. I had this sheet and it told me what chapters are coming in this subject and that. And one more thing, here we didn't have pre-boards or boards. There used to be two things. There was one thing called a TMA, which is a tutor marked assignment, and one were our exams. So when you're enrolling in NIOS, you get to choose a study center. It is any school around you. You can just choose it. So anytime you have, let's say, home science was a practical subject, or computer science was a practical subject. Anytime you have to give a practical, you can go to this school. You can get your mark sheets, date sheets here. You can like go there and get all of your curriculum. So for the TMAs, those were assignments and they held 20% of your overall grade. Now you do those assignments at home, have to like there was these many questions, you have to complete them. So they were a good practice for the main exams. Like out of 20 marks, that 20% was in my whole main grade. So you completed all of that. I had physical copies. And for 10th grade, I went to the school and submitted that. I did my practicals. It was very, like super fun. So I knew that these chapters are covered in practicals, these chapters are covered in TMAs, then I have to study the rest for the exams. So it was a very sorted scene that okay, I know this is what I have to study, this is what's coming in the exam.
Okay. That is interesting because I feel like it will be very scary to actually go to a place where you don't know anything. Because, yes, I felt that in my entrance exam, the engineering entrance exam. For example, if you are writing exam for 12th or 10th or anything like that, at least you know that your classmates are also going to this place and everything. But in entrance, you are just randomly going to a center. So, yeah, I understand how scary that can be. Now, coming back to some of the resistances, one of the resistances I know definitely everyone is going to talk about is what if my kid is going to forget how to connect with people? Because you're homeschooled, you're not meeting your classmates every single day. And what if you don't even know how to talk to people or have a proper conversation? How do you answer that?
At that time, I was going to these other classes, and this is one thing that even I used to struggle with this a little bit, that how can I socialize, how can I like hang out with kids of my age. When I just left, I still had I still had friends from my neighborhood that I used to play with for 2 to 3 hours. So I had a friend group there, and other than that, I was going to those classes even though I was the youngest there. All of the other people were, I don't know, in from 30s, 40s, 50s, some people from 20s. I learned how to communicate with them. So that was a plus point, which is why even now, when I see some of my friends or some like kids in the family, they might not be communicating that well with adults. They just try to avoid. But that gave me a skill that I can talk to any adult. We can hold up and keep up a conversation. As for if someone is pursuing homeschooling now, one thing I would say is enroll your child in classes. Like I was going in those classes. Maybe your child is interested in sports. You enroll them in a sports class. And I would honestly say this is something I slightly regret not doing in my homeschooling journey. But because I was going outside to play with my friends for hours, it got balanced out. Do enroll your child into some sort of sports or some sort of physical activity classes, because the actual laziness comes in there. For some kids, they are very physically active, so they just have to do. For some kids, they are academically not active. So for me, like later on, once I moved in from that neighborhood, I moved to a new place. I lost all of my friends from there. That was sort of like a shock back. Even though when I was leaving school, I wasn't like worried that okay, I'm gonna lose my friends. I was more excited for homeschooling. Same thing happened when I was shifting my house. I was more excited for the new house. I didn't realize I was going to lose my old friends. So that is some stuff that happens. The best thing you can do is enroll your child in classes with their peers as well. Nowadays, if you go for homeschooling, if you see homeschooling groups on Facebook or anything, there are so many people doing it now, especially after COVID. So after COVID, people have seen that okay, you can do online learning. That was also part of homeschooling as well. That you were just learning at home. After that, people have been more receptive of homeschooling. So now there are more options. Now you have more places to send your child to. I did go to some, there was some leadership tuition, leadership academy sort of place. I went there. I went to Sanskrit tuition. So till then, it was sorted. Like I had my fair share of socialization there.
Okay. One thing that I keep thinking about in this particular conversation as well is that most of the people right now, in the current situation, are both working. The couple are both working. So for them, they either send the kid to a play school, or they have some nanny taking care of the kid or something like that, and they work for a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6. Now, if a lady like that who is working in a bank, she cannot work from home. So if she is thinking of putting her kid into homeschooling instead of a proper school, then how can she approach? She will not be at home taking care of the kid or checking if the kid is actually able to complete stuff or anything, or how the kid is going to stay at home the whole day. She has no idea what's going on there. So what would you say to that?
No, I believe it is very, very crucial to have at least one parent who can focus on the child. Now, in my case, my mom is a homemaker, even though she used to help my dad in the business, but she was fully focused on me. And during that time, even my dad had more time to give to me. So whenever we used to go to any of these classes, both my parents were accompanying me there. And for anywhere else, then like all of those healing classes, all of those alternative education classes, my parents have always joined me there. So that is one big thing. It takes a lot of time investment, it takes a lot of resources, and you're putting in a lot to have that sort of homeschooling outcome. So this is really necessary. At least one parent should always be there with the child. Because let's say, even if both parents are working and you're thinking of homeschooling your child, that okay, the grandparents will take care, or I don't know, the like my brother will take care of my child or anything like that. I'm not very sure how that will work out, because either they should be on the same level of thinking as you, and they should know what the outcome is out of homeschooling, or else like you know the best for your child, you know where they are lacking, where they aren't lacking, where they need to be focused more and anything. So to have the best experience, it is necessary. So one person should just always be there.
Okay. So you have interacted with so many kids, among which some of them are homeschooled and some of them are traditionally schooled. So is there any distinctive difference that you have seen between these two sets of kids?
I must say, like, I haven't really interacted a lot with homeschooled kids, but the only places where you would see a distinct difference is either if let's say if I wasn't at the same level of study as my other peers, then I would have had a lot of trouble connecting with them. But like I was aware that okay, you're also studying civics, even I am studying civics, so we have common ground to talk about. And because I was always in touch with all of the my social circle, like all of my friends, I still knew how to talk to kids, and I didn't feel disconnected that okay, they go to school, they must know something that I don't. So that sort of thing never really happened, because all of that stuff was focused into my learning system. Let's say like I if I know how to communicate, if I know how to write, if I know how to hold up a conversation, then I don't think there's much difference between what a normal child does and what a homeschool child does. It's just that you have different priorities. Some a homeschool child might be focused on a specific subject that they like. A traditional child whose schooling might have like lots of subjects to work on, but other than that, I don't think there is going to be much of a difference. You just have to make sure that they still have the social environment, so they know how to like still like let's say do teamwork or stuff like that. Like I went to this one tuition, it was a leadership sort of tuition, it was classes. There we used to learn about teamwork and stuff like that. So All of that stuff is necessary. If you're completely isolating your child, then yes, there might be differences and there might be some problems. So that is something we need to take care of. Main things to take care of are you have to see discipline. That even though giving them the freedom, giving them the exposure, still making sure that they aren't left behind. We're not pressuring them with marks, we're motivating them with curiosity. So discipline is one thing. The second one is the socialization thing, that they should be aware of their peers. Like this one time, I was talking to some of my peers and I realized I couldn't connect with them. Why? Because I wasn't listening to the latest music. I wasn't watching movies. So that is something that happened in my childhood. I wasn't really listening to music or movies. But then I was like, okay, I need to have some sort of that part in my personality as well, because we these are just crucial aspects of our personality that makes us who we are. So after that, I was focusing on that part as well, that okay, I listen to this music, I like this person, I like this sort of movies, I like this or that. So having that common ground, that is something I struggled with a little bit, but then I got on track with that. So the next time I met those kids, I could also talk that okay, I did listen to that song, I did do that, this or that. It's just that socially there must not be a gap, which is why that socialization part is important. And third of all, that recreational or that sports thing, it is really necessary, because if your child ends up just staying on a desk at just like living a sedentary lifestyle, then it's not gonna help later. So that is something if I had to do my journey all over again, I would add this part as well, that I would have joined some sort of sports or something to be more active. I was active, I was playing in the park with my friends for hours, but just to add more of it.
That's very insightful, first of all. Thank you so much for that. Now, coming to the education system, what do you think are your biggest concerns with today's education system?
So I'll tell you one conversation I had with a teacher. So a cousin of mine, she's into education, and she was sharing this with me, that there is so much of academic syllabus that even if I want to talk to the students about values, if I want to talk to the students about what mindset is, what stuff like emotional resilience is, we don't have the time to discuss that. We are just always very focused on completing this syllabus, that syllabus, this curriculum, that curriculum. So she was just sharing this concern that even if I want to have a day with the kids and just teach them why integrity is important, why you should be honest, why you should be authentic, why you should like experience your emotions, why you should have a positive mindset and not like have negative self-talk or anything. There's no time for it left, especially after, I don't know, eighth or ninth grade. You are very much focused on what stream you have to pick, what sort of exams you have to give. So then you'll have, starting a lot of tuitions. Then you'll barely have the time. One of my cousin sisters, she is like 3 years younger than me. So she was in grade 10th. She would go to school and come back to tuition. So many other kids I've seen, they barely have any time. They would go to school, come back, just have lunch, and then they'll go to tuition, then they'll come back, have their dinner, then they'll do their homework again, and it's just repeatedly. So they don't have the time to learn all of this stuff. That is something that is missing, which is why what I do now is why I call this alternative education. That apart from the information that you're getting in school, the real life practical knowledge that you will need. So when you're into adulthood, when you feel like, when you're like sabotaging yourself, that okay, I feel like I'm not good enough, or how can I improve myself in this area or anything, reading about all of those history people won't help you in that moment. Knowing what king did what sort of ruling will not help you in that point of life, or knowing a specific maths equation will not help you at that given point. What will help you there is your emotional awareness, is the way you shift your thoughts to get yourself out of that zone and then to later process it. So now we're connecting the dots back to what we initially started from. So if you're getting there, like let's say when I was a teenager, when I was starting this journey, now obviously a lot of people used to say stuff that okay, we're not even sure if you're gonna have a career or not. So that stuff did affect me. But I had that faith. So I was also working on this sort of emotional awareness, this emotional intelligence, that okay, if this happens, Why are they saying this? They're not aware of how this works. They haven't seen it before. They aren't willing to understand. So I had an answer that why are they saying this? It's because of these reasons. How can I change this? If I work on myself, if I do stuff for myself, I will get results and they will automatically see those results. So I have the answers for everything. But all of that takes that time you take out for yourself. So these conversations you're having with yourself, you don't talk to another person for it. So having this sort of awareness within yourself that okay, if something like that happens, why is this happening? How can I improve it? How can I not have that happen again? Stuff like that. We aren't taught these questions in school.
Very true. I totally understand where that's coming from. So insecurity is definitely a big part of it, especially when you are forced to put yourself into that box and you are not fitting into that box. Definitely, this happens. And I love how you brought everything back to the beginning of the session. So I will ask a question from the beginning of the session again. We were talking about self doubt, right? And again, fear of failure. One of the things as a parent that we feel about our kid is that if a kid fails, then we take it personally. If my kid fails, then it's my failure too. We have talked so much about homeschooling right now, but I am very sure that so many parents are going to worry that if I take my kid out of the school and start homeschooling, even if I have all the time in the world for the kid, what if I fail in homeschooling? What if the kid turns out to be a lazy person or doesn't do well? What if I fail in this whole situation of homeschooling? What is your answer to that?
See, so I'll share this part with you. Like I said, I was working with energy manifestation, and now I'm working on bringing all of this knowledge to kids without them having to leave school. The only reason, firstly, I was able to start this is because I have completed my own homeschooling journey. So I know it from start to end. Now I can be honest with whatever were the consequences, whatever were the plus points of this. So I can share all of that journey entirely together, which is why I have started this. Now, the biggest myth was that if I start homeschooling my child, they won't be able to go back to normal, whatever the traditional way has been, like school, college, job, salary, this and that. Now that I am here, I have completed my 12th grade, I am like graduated out of school. If I have to, I can still go to college, I can still go back to whatever the traditional system would have been. If I would have graduated from school, I would have given entrance exams or going into some colleges and then eventually campus placement, this and that. If I want to do that today as well, I can still go back and do that. Because let's say, so from the place where I have done this, National Institute of Open Schooling, it is government recognized, it's a government board. It is recognized everywhere. So even if today I want to apply into, let's say, some universities abroad or even here, I can apply myself in those colleges and I can go there still. So all of those doors, no door has closed. It's just that you have opened up many more doors. Now, like I was more interested into learning about emotions and energy and everything, which is what called me to be a trainer or a coach. So if your child has some different calling, like if your child, let's say they want to become a professional athlete or a musician, or they want to master a specific skill, like I, for 4 years, I was studying how to build a digital business. That is a skill that I was mastering. I studied it for 4 years. So even though I didn't go to college, I didn't study for a specific degree, I studied a specific skill. So I know everything about that skill. Now, focusing on one skill instead of five skills, little, I focused on one skill full time. Now, anything I want to do there, I can do that. So it's just that all of your doors are open. Even if your child wants to go back to schooling, even if they want to go back to going to colleges and to jobs and everything. Like, let's say I wasn't feeling more close to a job. I felt always that I wanted to do my own business. Even if I want to go back, I can still do that. This is the biggest fear I have seen in parents' mind, that okay, agar if it doesn't go by plan, what then? So don't worry, no doors are closing up. You're just opening up more doors. You're just giving your child more freedom to explore. Because sometimes you don't even get the time freedom in school to even know what your child likes. Like they're always so much in academics. If they had the time to, like, let's say, spend half an hour on the piano, if you have the time to spend and to see that, okay, I feel like I can get better at this, then you can start focusing on that. Otherwise, you don't have the time to experiment. Here, you have the time to experiment with whatever subjects, whatever interests that your child has. So, this is one thing, nothing to worry about. Other than that, like, let's say what I am working towards, even if, let's say, you're both working parents, you can't take your child out of school. Now we have, like, let's say, even the coaching industry has grown up so much, and there's so many people who are experts of specific skills. If you can't, you don't have to homeschool your child. You can still teach them all of this alternative education stuff. So the main thing here is, the essence is that you want your child to live a better life, because high marks don't guarantee a high quality of life. And the reason I can say this with so much conviction is because I've seen it in my family, especially if you have a conversation with my parents. So I have an older brother who was like the topper and everything in school, like always the highest ranks and everything. So my parents observed this as well, that okay, even after all of that, how is it helping him in his life today? So it's the times when you are all by yourself and you are going through something, or if you are planning to do something big, with what conviction, with what energy, with what emotions are you able to do that? So end of day, all parents just want something good for their children so they can live a happy life. And if you know that high marks aren't guaranteeing it, at least you can equip them with these skills like emotional resilience or knowing how their mind works. Like as coaches, we know that our subconscious mind holds so much. Like 90% of what we do is controlled by our subconscious mind. So we can teach our kids more about that, how they can utilize that power,
Yeah,
right?
very, very true. So just to make it clear for the parents, so let me take my kid's example. Okay,
Hmm.
so she is 7 and she is going to first standard in the next month. Even though writing has been a little bit of an issue, they have still passed her and she is going to first standard. But I still know that she is not keeping up with the standards that are there in the school because it is too high. The standard is too high.
Hmm.
What I was thinking is, anyway, she got into first standard. Let me see how she does in first standard. So if she's still doing, she's able to keep up because now the timing is different. She did better when she was in school till 3 than she was in school till 12. 3 hours extra made a big difference. She was actually talking more intelligently, and I was seeing a big difference in her. Some kids might thrive in that situation. I don't know. So I said that now next year is going to be extra 3 hours of time, and let me see how this year goes. And in this year, once she completes this year, she will be 8.5 years old. Good level of age. By that
Hmm.
time, if she's not able to keep up with what the classmates are keeping up, so by that time, if she is not able to keep up with that syllabus, then I will be deciding to homeschool her. I'm not going to torture her more into that. This
Hmm.
is what I was thinking. So, while I'm thinking like that, there is this fear inside me also that what if I take her back? Okay, I start homeschooling from second standard onwards, and at the same time, she is not keeping up. She was keeping up better in first standard, but in second standard, I don't see that. And by third standard, right? Another 2 years later, I realized that this was a totally bad idea. This is not working for her. For some reason, this is not working for her. So if I am in this extreme situation, for fourth standard, can I go back to school? Is there an option still?
Yeah, you can. So it's just that anytime you're taking an admission into school, they are obviously going to take tests of your child. Then you can start preparing them for that test. Like, let's say if you want her to go back into third grade in school, they will take an assessment that, okay, if this child is fit, there is always an option to go back. Even my parents used to ask me this when I was in seventh grade, eighth grade, that in case any day you want to go back, you let us know and we'll put you back in school.
Okay.
So
So
that is always an option.
Okay. So this actually, I think, helps a lot of people who have this fear that what if I can't pull it off? Because I understand while I talk to you itself, I understand that the level of teaching ability that your mother has might have been a big part of this whole thing, right? The way she's responding to you, the way she's communicating with you, and the way she is teaching you, or if you don't understand this particular topic, the way she might be explaining it to you, even the attitude that comes with it without any judgment and everything. Just because your mother has that skill doesn't mean that every person who wants to do the homeschooling would have those skills. What if they are coming from a place of judgment, or at least they are discouraging the kid a lot more, that you can't do anything, tu nalayak hai, तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा. If they are coming from that level, or if inherently if they don't have the patience to actually be with the kid, even though they need to and they know where it is, but if they are not able to pull it off, they should still have that option to go back, right? So most of the people, I think, don't want to do this just because of this kind of a fear. And because of that, now schooling is, very low return in investment, right? And the fees for the school, that is skyrocketed anyway. And even the people who have the interest to do homeschooling, they are also not doing it because of the fear of all of these things and char log kya kahenge and everything. And I think that's also one of the reasons why the school fees also is skyrocketing, and it's becoming a big vicious circle right now from an education point of view. So do you agree with this? What do you think about this situation?
See, for this situation, I would say yes, you have to be very careful if you're starting a homeschooling journey because, let's say, if I were in your place and like you shared that you'll see for this year if she's doing great. See, if your child is doing great in school and they are happy there, then there is no need to take them out of there. If your child is thriving, there was this one time I met this couple who wanted me to talk to their son. I think he was about 9 or 10 years old. So they used to keep on moving like from India and Dubai. So they wanted me to convince their child for homeschooling. So I talked to that child for, I don't know, like 45 minutes, 1 hour. What I could grasp is that he was thriving in school. He loved being there. He had his friends in there. Then I told them that, okay, if he is happy in school, then it's great. But because they had this thing of for traveling, then I had to tell him in a different tangent that, okay, you can still have all of your friends. Whenever you're coming to India, you can always visit them. It's just that you have more freedom of learning and you aren't stuck to a specific schedule. So this is one thing. If your child is doing great at school, then you have no need to take them out. What you can do is you can introduce them to more alternative education experiences. Like that is something I'm working on. That in one place you can get everything, all of this stuff. If your child is thriving, no need to do that. If you have to start, if you're considering, then start preparing yourself as a parent for it. So let's say, like you're sharing, some parents might be like taunting their own kids, right? So for those parents, you have to start working on your own journey, because if you yourself aren't emotionally resilient, if you yourself are not fixing your limited beliefs, because if you're taunting your own child, it might be out from your own childhood that, okay, people used to say stuff to me and I don't want the same thing to happen to my kids. So sometimes in order to protect their kids, they actually do end up harming by saying stuff like this. So you will have to start on your own journey as parents. Like let's say when this my journey started, even my mom wasn't very like happy about the homeschooling thing, obviously, because people had a lot to say and they would always come to her to say stuff. But she had her own journey starting as well. She was also getting the hang of it, that how does this work. So it does take a lot of effort. It does take, even in terms of financial investments, for me it took like, I believe if I were in school, it would have been lesser, but because I was exposed to so many different topics and stuff, and my parents were giving me the freedom that, okay, if this is a skill that you want to grow in, then we will take you to the further classes. if you want to learn it till the end. So I was like, okay, I'm excelling in this field, I want to learn it. Let's say I started Reiki healing, I was loving it, I was having a great time in it, I was making it into a skill. So I did it to the highest level possible. So now it is a skill set. I can use it at any time of my career, even if I want to switch to being a healer or if I want to train people how to do that. So it's just, it will take efforts. You have to be prepared for it. And if you're considering homeschooling for a child, you have to do your own self assessments that am I ready for this? Because even if you are homeschooling a child, I don't want any parent to ever have the guilt that, okay, what we are doing, is it right for our child? So even though you always have the option to go back, you should also be kind to yourself as a parent that, okay, I have the faith in me that I can do this journey for my child.
Yeah, very true. This was very profound, especially coming from someone like you, because you are just turning 18. 18 is considered the time to become an adult. And I love how you are able to put yourself in the shoes of a parent and talk about it so profoundly and so deeply. And I love the work that you do, and the way you are approaching people and helping them with emotional resilience is something that we really need. This is the need of the hour, in my opinion. So, from a perspective of the parent again, what are the things that you can offer to a parent who is thinking of homeschooling their kid, or from this perspective, is there anything that you offer from your coaching perspective?
Yeah. So if you are a parent who wants to homeschool their child, like you have it decided that, okay, I need to take my child out, then I can help you on a one-on-one and share with you like the start to end journey of homeschooling, how you can do everything, like from enrolling your child to picking out the subjects and everything like that. If that's the case, or if you are parents who the parents are ready but the child isn't, then like talking to the child, like I did in the other parents case. So the parents were ready but the child wasn't, so I can give that honest feedback because that child wasn't ready to have that conversation with his parents. But because I was talking to him in a friendly way, then he was able to tell me that, okay, I love my football club, I love my friends, I don't want to leave this. So like analyzing your entire situation and then helping out you out, that should you really do this or is it not necessary? If it isn't necessary, if your child is thriving at school, what I'm bringing now is this alternative education experience. Like right now, I'm building this sort of summer camp thing. The thing what I'm doing here is make it as fun as possible, not making it like a chore to study and to learn and to cram stuff in there. Teaching everything with stories, with examples. Had my dad just told me the concept of telepathy, that this is how you talk, this is how this happens, and that, I wouldn't have been interested at all. I would be like, मुझे कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा है, I can't understand anything, I don't want to learn. But because of that practical experience, when I saw that butterfly come in, when I saw that cat turn its head, that's when I was practically seeing it. It felt like a story. It was something I could resonate with. So all of these skills, these emotional resilience, how you can like use your mind power, how you can protect your energy, how you can start building better emotions, and how you can manifest well, because kids are amazing at manifestation. When I talk about myself, when I talk about kids I've seen, they are insanely well at manifestation because they don't have the type of pressure that adults have. Like as adults we think that, okay, this is my limit, this is how much I deserve, this and that. As kids you just express your desire, right? You don't think much to it, which is why manifestation works great for them. So all of these skills you can still teach your child, just make sure it's a very fun way, and that's what I'm bringing here for parents.
Awesome. Other than this, what are the different services that you are giving to people?
Yeah, so for kids, I can do group sessions and teach them all of these topics. Now, over my 9 years of homeschooling journey, I've learned various topics. Like even in emotions, I've written from different school of thoughts, and even in mindset and how you, from a psychology point of view, from a new age point of view, all of that, taking out the best methods, simplifying them, and teaching them to your kids so they can build that foundation and use it anywhere in their life, starting from teenage and adulthood itself. those are the first places where you would need stuff like emotional resilience. As a teenager, you're going through so many changes. As an adult, you're like getting exposed to the world, you're not sure how everything works. So all of this stuff, like I'm simplifying it out to teach all of your kids. Yep.
Awesome. What has been the most common problem that people have come to you for?
In terms of homeschooling or manifestation?
Manifestation.
It's the same thing that people aren't able to connect with their goals. They aren't able to like fully put themselves in the process of manifestation. Some people come in, they're like, I'm doing affirmations every day, I'm not getting a result. Or I have put up a vision board, I'm not getting results. That's when you have to tell the people that it's not just the tools that are going to help you. Manifestation is like you're putting in so many things and you're combining them all together to get a result. Like, let's say if you're making a pizza and you're like, okay, I have the cheese, I have the sauce, I have everything, but I don't have water to add to my dough. So then you can't expect to have a pizza or like stuff like that. So someone is working well with their thoughts, but not their feelings. Someone is working well with feelings. I know I can get this, but I am not able to think about it. Some people have both thoughts and feelings, but they are struggling at the action part. So it's always some sort of misalignment. So mainly it's always alignment issues, and once you're fully aligned, then you can manifest.
Awesome. Now that you have seen so many people and what they are going through, all the difficulties that you have helped people with, what do you think is the biggest concern right now that's going on that can maybe help change the whole world? Like there is this small thing, let's say, which if you change this, then the whole world is changed. Is there anything that you feel is the biggest concern right now?
People don't connect with themselves enough. They don't. So, see, as kids, and when we're growing up, we have friends to talk to, we have family and all. But at some point, you drop off friends, you have new ones and coming in. So it's always like it's not something permanent there. One major lesson I learned through my journey of homeschooling is, like I shared in the very first of this session, that everyone has this inner power within you. We call it God, we call it universe, we call it science, whatever you call it. But there is this one power. Now, if you connect yourself with that power, now as a child, I used to call that power my best friend. Because see, when I changed my neighborhood, I didn't have friends. And at that same time, I was learning about manifestation. So when I was told that, okay, just like that genie and Aladdin, there is also this genie called the universe who will listen to you. The main learning I learned here was to that power or to that God who you are talking to. You aren't just there to ask for stuff, you are there to open up. So if I was talking to that universal power, I was just opening up. It was like I found this new best friend. So as children, we've always had imaginary best friends, right? This is an imaginary person I'm serving tea in my kitchen set and all. So I'm like, what if that imaginary person was this power? So I started talking in that way. Now some people might think it's weird that you're talking to yourself, but it's something that will never betray you because you're talking to yourself. Sometimes it's just that we have to put things into words in order to understand them. Some situation happens, we don't process it, we bottle it up, we keep it aside. But when you're having these talks with your inner self, okay, this happened, I didn't feel very nice. This is something I can do to improve it. Or sometimes, like I've mentioned this in my book as well, there's a chapter where I'm just talking about this, that you talk to the universe, you talk to the power like it's your best friend. And you don't just say that, okay, I want to manifest this, I want to manifest that. You say everything, anything going on in your mind, that okay, this is how my day was, this is what I did, anything like that. It's like you're having this conversation with yourself, the inner power within yourself. I do it right before I sleep. So you're opening out everything, right? And then you put in that part that, okay, I am grateful for all of this stuff that I have already. This is something that I will be super grateful for if I have it. But other than that, all of this, I am grateful for it. You're just talking to yourself, to your inner power. That one thing itself is going to shift so much because your inner power is the only thing that is unconditional. It was there with you since day one. It will be there for you at day last. Everything else, it will be coming and going, even your parents, even your friends, even your family. Everyone is going to grow, they have their own journeys. But your inner power is one thing that will never leave you. So, to establish that sort of connection with yourself, when you're having those hard conversations with yourself, that, okay, this is someplace I need to improve. You're having all of that. Trust me, it is something everyone needs. And if everyone starts focusing on this, the world will genuinely be such a better place.
This is very new for me. So thank you so much for this, because I have also been doing manifestation for 10 years now. And the one thing that I feel is very similar to what I have learned is that instead of saying this, I use a thought journal. Like I just go on writing. So it's basically still the same thing, conversation only, but it's more writing. And the reason why did that, I started with that, was because most of the conversations I was having with myself was actually a criticism, or a judgment on myself that was happening all the time. So this is what we have learned as a kid, right? So if a parent is very judgmental or critical, for even for the right reasons, but we ended up our inner voice ends up to be like that parent. So for me, that is what happened, and I ended up being very judgmental of myself for everything. So it would be something very small mistake that I did, and I would my whole talk to myself would be like, do you shouldn't have done that, beating myself up for that. So instead of having that talk like that, where it's a judgment, if I write, I am much nicer to myself. That's the reason why I ended up writing more. But I like how you think that God or universe is like a friend instead of someone we look up to. If it's someone inside and someone we are talking to, I think that's very powerful. And I love how you have put up this and how simply you are explaining everything. These are very deep concepts, but the way you are explaining them are so simple. And I think an 8-year old, 7-year old will easily understand this. So I'm so happy that I got this opportunity to talk to you like this. And I love how you are helping people, and you are doing amazing work, Devina. Thank you so much for doing this for the world, and thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you so much for having me here. And like you shared, even a thought journal, that's exactly what you're doing. You're writing it down for your self reflection. So, whatever means of communication helps someone. Like for me, I'm imagining this conversation. Sometimes I speak it out loud, sometimes, like, you write it down. It's just some way to connect with yourself. And you just really like empowered my mission by telling me this, that I want to simplify everything as much as possible so even a child can understand it.
Very true. I love what you do, and I have always been admiring you from the first time that I had met you, and from that time onwards till now, I have seen you grow so much, and you are so inspiring. But then today, I realize the magnitude of what you have learned, and it is so inspiring and amazing. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me here. It was such a lovely conversation, and I really hope this provides more value to everyone who's been watching this.